Today is one of those good days when we have two guests. There's one main guest, Dr. Gabriela Corosi, whom I've known for several years in Oregon. I no longer live in Oregon, but she is one of those Oregonians that made an impression on me that's unforgettable with her kindness. But that's not the reason I'm bringing her on today. The reason I'm bringing her on today is much larger. This lady works in medical services. During the heart of the pandemic, I saw how she would walk in there into a risk area and take care of people and come out and still continues to talk with a smile, with a certain humility and humanity that transcends. And today we have Dr. Rawson also joining us. Guess what? The more, the merrier. And if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Dr. Gideon Fumukwai, the guy with a weird name and a goofy accent from Africa. But more importantly, my show is focusing on individuals who are unsung heroes with untold stories that you and I can learn from. Dr. Korosi has an untold story. And in my eyes, based on what I saw during the pandemic, she is an unsung hero that we must celebrate. So I want to say, Dr. Korosi and Dr. Rawson, welcome aboard.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.
So,
Listen, first of all, I do not want to mislead anybody. Unlike Dr. Crocia, I am not a doctor. Okay. My first name is DR. I've been called doctor. I've been called doc all of my life. And that's fine. I even worked in healthcare for 11 years. And I had a not for profit that was in 55 countries that focused on healthcare and homelessness. So, yeah, I'm used to being called doctor, so I get that. But I just want you to know, just in case, my name is DR.
I love that twist. I love that twist, Mr. Rawson. Your parents are the best. How come you got so lucky? You got parents that would give you a name that some of us would have to go to school for 7 years just to get a DR in front of our name. How did you get to be so fortunate? Some of us did not get such. I mean, that's
Well, I
unfair.
don't want to. I don't want to take away too much from Gabriella because she really deserves to be honored. I can tell you, knowing her, just for the amount of time that I have. But briefly, my father's name was EJ. My grandfather was HH.
Mm.
Those were not their given names either. But my parents picked out DR, and I think compared to EJ and HH, very lucky, very lucky. And the first experience I had with doctor was I was in kindergarten, and the teacher said, "Dr. Rawson, could you come up and get the milk for all the kids, please?" And that's when I probably realized I was in trouble. But yeah, it's been a blessing. A lot of people around the world, and I've been doing business around the world, or did business for more than 50 years.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know me as anything other than doctor or doc or DR. That nobody knows my last name, which is fine. I really don't care, but it's kind of fun. So
this
that's what the name
is
can do for you.
this is one of those cool days that we didn't plan this. If anyone in the audience watching is having a good laugh at this, let me be clear about this. We didn't plan this, but I'm happy it's happening because me and Gabrielle, when we meet, we don't take ourselves too seriously. She's a doctor, but she doesn't even want me to call her doctor. And Mr. Rawson is not a doctor, but everybody calls him doctor. This is very fun. But in the interest of those who are just joining, I see some people are joining on Facebook. The purpose of today was to get to pick the brain of this amazing lady who is a medical professional and who also finds the time to write. I believe she's a prolific writer. Now, if you spend 12 hours working, the last thing you get home to do, you want to do is to sit down and write. But Gabriela writes. She has even challenged me to contribute sometimes, and I've not taken that challenge or have not been able to live up to that challenge. But I want us to pick her brain and occasionally also turn to Mr. Rawson and pick his brain because I know one thing: when good people meet, great things happen. So all the three of us, I'm sure we're gonna make some magic happen today. But let's go to the person who is the main guest, and that is Dr. Korosi. Can you introduce yourself to us, ma'am? I know you as a medical professional. I know you as an amazing writer. Can you introduce yourself to this audience, which I think is predominantly people in the diaspora from all kinds of backgrounds? European diaspora, African diaspora, Asian diaspora, somewhat people that are not living in their home countries. They're away from home.
Well, first of all, Gideon, oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me again. we tried to do this once and then an emergency happened. And I think the best way I would like to introduce myself, I could say, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I'm a public health professional, I'm a nurse. I could say all those things. But what I actually would really like to say is what I learned last year when I went out to the land with veterans for 2 weeks and I lived out with the sage close to Mother Earth. And out there we come up with an I am statement of who you are in the depth from your heart and your being. And one of the hardest things that I learned there is usually I go and take care of other people and I haven't done as much to take care of me. And the I am statement that come from that experience is that I am a woman who loves herself. And then after that, I am a woman who builds community, and I am a woman who loves Mother Earth and listens to Mother Earth. Those are my main, that's who I am.
Very interesting. I know you're very unassuming. You don't brag about your accomplishments. And now I know that you love Mother Earth. And who am I to challenge that? Because don't we all come from Mother Earth, or we belong to Mother Earth in one shape or form or another? That's very interesting because I did not know that dimension of you. I've known you as a prolific writer, and we'll come to that very soon. But let us just dig a little bit deeper. You have a certain curiosity for the world, for travel, that
yes,
I also share that curiosity with you. Which are some of the most fun earthly places that you've lived in or worked in?
Well, I love the forest, and I live currently in a forest with trees. And I also, when I lived in Washington, I lived in the middle of the forest, and I love that feeling of coming out and being able to touch the trees and breathe that fresh green scent of the trees. I feel home in the forest.
Very interesting. I feel home in the desert, even though I grew up in Africa. And we have Mr. Rawson with us, who lives in my favorite desert. Is Nevada considered a desert? He lives, you introduce yourself to us, but I know I love Nevada so much, not so much because of forests, but because of the dryness and the predictability of the weather. I don't want to get out and see any rain. And the only place I can predict the weather is Nevada. Tell us, Mr. Rawson, why do you like Nevada?
Well, I bought a steel company here in 2003, and when I sold it in 2004, my wife said to me, I think we ought to retire here, and I agreed. We felt better. It was dry heat. We lived in Southern California, about a mile from Disneyland, and we just enjoyed it. It's a much better environment. The other thing I like about it is I'm a huge people person, and There's lots of reasons why I don't like a lot of places, and having traveled around the world more than 25 times, I can tell you there's a bunch of places I don't like, a bunch that I do, but there's some that I don't. And here we live in a very inclusive environment. We have retirees from all over the world. The military brings a lot of them to us, and I'm a veteran myself. But it's just it's important that you live in a place where everyone has the freedom to do whatever it is they want to do, to express whatever they want to express, and to be part of the community, not singled out as this group or that, but part of the community. And that's what I was looking for, and that's what I think this community, and I'll call it Las Vegas, Henderson, Metroplex, offers. And that's one of the reasons why we like it.
Amazing. Yes, I am familiar with the hospitality of the people that live in Nevada, and I benefited from that when I went to grad school in Reno. And quite often I drove down to Vegas. The sweeping vistas when you drive between Reno and Vegas are just unforgettable. And if I could change something about my place of residence, I'll be in Vegas. But when you say you're a people person, that doesn't surprise me because Gabriel is also a people person. And I'm,
Notice that. Yeah, it's easy to notice.
yes, they say the apples don't fall far from the trees, right? Our connections, they tend to be people that share some common ideas like us. So I want to go back to Gabrielle and check with her. You write a lot, and I've noticed that you write from the heart. Why is it that you like to write from the heart?
Is there any other way?
Yeah, I
That's a good
agree.
question. That's a good question.
Any other way to write? I mean,
I don't think so. I mean, it's just what comes, right? If it's not from the heart, if it's not the truth, then what's the point?
I think even if you're writing fiction, if you're not writing from the heart, if you're not writing from some level of passion, well, what good is it? Why would I want to read it? Then it
Exactly.
becomes like the conversation we have going all the time.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. I want people who are creative. I want people who can speak from their heart, from their experience, and share with me how that impacted them on that particular subject. And Gabriella does a great job of doing that.
Yes. I really admire the fact that he keeps it easy. She keeps it straightforward. And like she said, is there any other way to write about it? And I know that there are people that would want to write only from their brains. They want to sound very smart. But the unfortunate thing about that is it doesn't connect. It doesn't move us. It doesn't inspire us. It doesn't influence us to do something to change the world to be a little bit better. But what I've noticed from Gabrielle is she writes from the heart. So, Gabrielle, what is one of your favorite books? Because you've published many books. Which one is your favorite and why?
Well, I have to pick just one. Okay.
It's like, that's a tough one. I have to pick from one of my children who's the best. No, they're not going to feel betrayed, of course.
Well, but right now I'm gonna say that my favorite one is the addiction one because that's my first baby. Our society addiction and more uncovered, and I wrote poetry, since I was young, but that was my first major work after the dissertation, when I had some time and sit down and kind of collected stories and experiences from other people, as well as from my own family, and then the knowledge that I had from 10 years of being an addiction nurse and what I have seen, and that is like my part of my life is in it, and there's so many emotions and so many tears when went into that book, and I actually just read the book and reworked and did some addition to it. So third edition, I just added that, so that's going to come out soon. But yeah, I would say that's my favorite one right now.
Okay, the book about addictions, and having
Yes,
been someone on the front lines of this issue, and this is an issue that is really impacting families all across America.
every
And
single
even,
family.
yes, even when I lived in Asia and Singapore, it was beginning to rear its ugly head out there. And even in Africa, where I grew up, it's already making it's beginning to make an inception there. So, as someone who is very experienced in that field from a nursing perspective, what is one recommendation that you can give to families who are struggling today? You can give it as a writer, you can give it through your lens of a public health professional.
I would say that it's an extremely difficult road, and you have to do what you have to do for yourself to be protected.
Mhm,
It's really difficult to see your loved ones suffer, but it's
mhm,
also really easy for them to drag you down on the
mm,
same road. And
mm.
especially with families who have other children and other loved ones, it's important for them to take care of themselves as well.
Yeah, so we need to exercise quite a great deal of caution. And I know Mr. Rawson, who has been in the uniform services, sometimes it breaks my heart to see that some of the toughest, the brightest, who have been on the front lines of battle, when they come home, they go through some really, really strange and dark things, and they become susceptible to addictions. I don't know if Mr. Rawson has something to add to that, but based on your experiences as a businessman, what could we do to extend a hand to those we know in such a way that they can heal and we all become healed?
Well, I think my first experience was coming back from Vietnam. The brothers and sisters that I came back with, so many of them wound up being A, homeless, and B, on drugs.
Mm,
There were a lot of drugs in Vietnam, and those who were in positions of authority just more or less overlooked it. And I
mm,
think that's part of the problem of the addiction is that we facilitate it with others by the fact that we overlook it. We don't
mm,
want to get involved. We don't
mm,
want to disrupt anything or cause any disturbance. My gosh, God forbid we should actually talk to somebody about something and care.
mm,
So anyway, I saw that when I came back from the service. Uh, when we started a company called C4 Worldwide, where we're in 55 plus countries, and our goal was healthcare and homelessness. And
mm,
in the area of homelessness, what we realize is twofold, and I think this applies to drugs as well, is that you're never going to eliminate addiction,
mm,
period. Some people have that personality. Uh, just as an example, I've been on Vicodin and hydrocodone since I was 25 due to some injuries that I sustained, but I
mm,
take it on a PRN basis. So I've never been addicted to it. I have a personality that is not addictive, but a
mm,
lot of people do. And that's a huge, huge problem. They
mm,
have that personality, so you've got to kind of deal with that first. Anyway, I found that we weren't going to eliminate homelessness and we're not going to eliminate addiction. So, what can you do? Well, then you start looking at ways you can support that, not in a positive way, in that, oh, yeah, take some more drugs. No, is supported in a way that says, here's an environment where it's easier for you to come
mm,
off that addiction, to make
mm,
change in your life, to be
mm,
supportive. And that's all about self care and their own image of who they are and so forth, and that's the kind of thing that's not being done very much.
mm,
We don't I did, but a lot of employers never looked at their employees and said, what can I do to help them be a
mhm,
better individual? What can I do to help them achieve more and to accomplish more? So
Yes.
they just don't do that. And so we don't do that with people who are addiction. They're kind of like homeless in a way. Why touch them? Why
Mhm.
talk to them? Why intervene in any way, shape, or form? But
Mm.
I've always found that it's the one-on-one care, people like Gabriella, who provide that one-on-one care to people, and her level of caring says to people that I I must have some self-worth,
Mm.
because why would she do this if I didn't?
Exactly.
And so when we as others, not necessarily healthcare professionals as she is, also demonstrate the fact that, hey, you do have worth, and I'm concerned about you. And I think you're a good person. And I
Mm.
think you got a problem. And maybe there's some way I can help you. But I can tell you one thing, you have worth. A
Yep.
lot of people have never, ever heard that.
Hmm.
Isn't that
That
amazing?
that is tough to even listen to. That
Yes.
there are people in our world, in our time, that have not found someone that would tell them or acknowledge them and validate them for their humanity. That's really tough to hear. And it draws me into the direction of you as a writer, Gabriela. What can you do? What kind of messages, what kind of books can you write that people who are going through this would love to learn so that they come to a point where they realize I am worthy? Like Mr. Rawson is saying, I am bigger than this, I'm better than this. I can walk away from this, or I can detach myself and find some other productive ways to use myself to make communities, make my life better and my community better. What are some of the things that a writer like you could do besides being a public health professional?
Well, for example, what I did with the addiction book is I talked to all kinds of people. So I talked to people who lived through the addiction. I
Mhm.
talked to parents, I talked to grandparents, I talked to
Mhm.
children, I talked to community members, I talked to doctors, nurses, social workers,
Mhm.
everybody to kind of try to get a whole picture and heard everybody's story as they were
Mhm.
going through things. And by telling their story as well as telling my story, and
Mhm.
then coming up in the end exactly what they are
Mhm.
said, that you are worth it and what are
Mhm.
the things that you can do, and then there's connection and humanity, and it's worth it. There are helping hands out there for you.
Yeah.
I think that provides an amazing power
Mhm.
because it's different. Yes, you need to go into the hospital, you might need to get medications, you need to detox, you need to do all those things, but in the end you also need the human connection and the caring and the love, and to feel like it's worth living, because
Yes.
that's one of the pitfalls of addiction. People can go into depression
Yes.
and suicidal mode, and then you
Yeah.
need people and community around you to
Mhm.
say, no, we are here, we'll catch you.
Mm. Very interesting. And as we're talking, I'm thinking because I have relationships, family members, distant family members, that I'm picking up some ideas from here that now I can try to intervene, because when you turn a blind eye, doesn't mean the problem has gone away. If you stick your head into the sand like the they say, is it the ostrich? Doesn't mean the problem has disappeared. You raise your head up, you still have the problem, is still there. It's still staring at us in the face. So I love the fact that you talk about storytelling, because stories allow us to make sense of our world. Stories
Yes.
allow us to learn from others. And I don't know if you have a story, Mr. Rosen has a story about how someone's experience has gone from bad to good. If you have one story like that, I would love for you to share a quick one. And I know Rick is in the green room. We may have to admit Rick. Rick, if you're still there, let us know. We'd love to admit you at some point in case you know someone that is going through something similar and we'll be happy to learn from you. But first of all, to Gabriel and to Mr. Rawson, do you know any success story of somebody that went from addiction to full recovery or to partial recovery for that matter?
Yes, I've seen amazing stories. I've seen people crash burn down to the bottom,
Hmm.
died, came back,
Came back.
and recovered fully. And unfortunately, many times people do have to hit rock bottom before they can come back.
Mhm.
But then there's also stories when, because they had a really supportive family and community, they were able to recover. And then many of the people who I've seen recover, then they entered healthcare and become a nurse or a social worker because they were inspired by those people, or an addiction counselor,
Mm.
and continued the work because they got
Mm.
inspired by the people who helped them, and now they are there to help others.
Wow.
And I think that's magical when it comes full circle.
Yes.
And I had nursing students or people who entered nursing because of me, and that's just like the greatest gift of like, okay, you were inspired enough
Mm.
by what I did
Mm.
that you're willing to do nursing or something similar, helping others. And I think that's just the greatest gift. One of my
Wow.
professor once told me, because she helped me out getting a nursing teaching job, she wrote me a reference letter, and she was the dean of the nursing school, and I was like, wow, why would you do this for me? She said, you'll do this one day for somebody else. And I think that was one of the greatest lessons, is like, keep helping others, because then, it's just a circle. Then they help others and they help others, and that's how we can build a beautiful community.
Wow. That is very inspiring. And that also reminds me when I became a firefighter, it was because I saw an act of kindness. The way the paramedics treated somebody that
Hmm.
I was living with when I first got to Singapore, I thought, this is beautiful. This is incredible. And that experience allowed me to see myself doing something like that. So you can never underestimate the power of one person to touch another. That's what I'm learning from you. And that's from on the front lines, because you were in the front lines, you were helping people suffering from addictions, and they got inspired. They went into the field of nursing. We know we have a shortage of nurses. So you definitely help in plugging that hole. Just like the firefighters and paramedics in Asia inspired me to become a firefighter. I went all the way up to becoming a captain. Now, this is really transformational. Mr. Rawson, do you have any story that someone benefited from, or someone transformed from a dark time to a good time in which they made a recovery?
I have my own story.
Uh-oh. That's close to home.
I
Tell us about that.
I started out as a homeless kid,
Ouch.
and I was homeless from the time I was 9.5 until I was a little over 13. And one person helped me and my family get back on the road to becoming not homeless. But I was 9.5 years old, 5'7", standing in a sea of trash cans behind an Italian restaurant, when this little Italian man steps out and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, sir, I have to feed my mother, brother, and 2 sisters, and this is the only way I can do it, is to be able to get food from behind restaurants, and yours is one of the best." He said, "Drop the food. Go get a job." I said, "Well, I have walked up and down a particularly long street in San Diego, and some people were willing to hire me until they found out I was 9.5. He said, "You're 9.5." I said, "I'm 9.5 years old." So once they found that out, they wouldn't hire me. He says to me, "Can you wash dishes?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You're hired." And that is where it began. Within probably 9 months, My mother, who had never worked a day in her life, at 29 years old, was learning how to become a waitress, and she worked there until she was 44 and died of cancer. So that whole life experience, it kept me focused. It kept me going. But I lived in some pretty interesting environments, an all Hispanic environment when I was in elementary school and in middle school. I was in an environment that was all African American. And when I was in high school, I was in a mixed environment where I was still an outsider. I was still a minority. So it was an interesting way to be raised, but the experience I had was that so many things came at me, and that's part of being addicted. Uh, these folks have so much that come at them. They're poor, they don't have money, they need help, they need something, and people take advantage of them all the time because they're the easiest people to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
People tried to take advantage of me, but as I said, when I was 9.5, I was 5'7". By the time I was 12, I was 5'10" and weighed 225. But still, I got beat up because I wouldn't run drugs and I wouldn't do prostitution and I wouldn't do a lot of different things that people wanted of me. But I stayed focused on what I wanted. Well, I did that because I had a good self-image of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the problem of people that are out there, the people with drug addiction and people with other types of addiction. They have such a poor self-image that it's very tough for them to get to the next level. That's why people like Gabriella and the folks she worked with are so important to people who have these addictions, because they need to see her example. They need to see that in spite of the fact that they're addicted to whatever, people still care about them.
Yes.
It's huge. It's huge. When you understand that somebody cares for you, that's huge. It is for people who aren't addicted at all. If
Yes.
we're suddenly in a relationship and somebody loves us, doesn't it just change who we are? It
Yep.
just changes everything. It changes
Yep.
our outlook,
Yep.
changes our perspective.
Yep.
Everything has changed. Well, it's not any different if you're dirt poor, you're addicted to drugs, and somebody comes along and says, "You know what, Betty? You are a good person.
Mm.
You're struggling with this right now, but you can get past this
Yes.
because you are a good person, and we're going to help you in any way we can." Suddenly, somebody cares about you.
Yep.
Does that not make a big difference, Gabriella?
Yes, huge difference.
Huge. And as you were sharing that very personal testimony and experience, which is very moving, I was thinking about some of the people that I've benefited from most in life. It is not those who came to me and dissed on me and talked down to me and make me feel little. It was rather those that found a way to appreciate the little light that I may have and affirm that. And through that, I started to feel like I cannot disappoint this person.
Yes.
However bad I may be, I cannot fail this person because this might be the one person that I need at some point. So as you were sharing that, it was really hitting home with me. And it also reminded me of a document which I've shared very often in my leadership programs. But I first stumbled on it when I was working in Seaside, precisely, Gabriella, in Astoria at the Tongue Point Job Corps Center. When we became friends, I worked there, and I was used that document at the very end. You saw I was sliding to the side. I was looking. I was trying to find it. I couldn't find it, but I'm sure I'm probably gonna be able to retrieve some of it for my brain. But it is powerful when you affirm people. They start to see a new light at the end of the tunnel, and they start to search. They start to move towards that light. But if you don't affirm them, they see is darkness, and they feel that there's no way they can get out. And that's a very, very painful, that's a very dark place to be. So let me go back to Gabrielle. uh, given some of those success stories that you have encountered, thanks to your commitment one on one to helping them, when you now write, are you sharing some of those stories, or are you saying, man, this is too close to home, or this, I don't want to divulge names? Do you use some of those personal examples to help other people make sense of the world through your eyes, through your own personal involvement?
So I only share stories of people who allow me to share their stories. Like if I get a permission to share a story, I might give like a general example or speak from experience. But otherwise, what I'm trying to share is general positivity and support for each other as a community and as a species, and the love for nature and connection and poetry. And it's kind of like, I don't have a plan. You know, whatever comes to me that I write, and it kind of like also, I'm almost forced to write it, if that makes sense. Like if I wake up at 3:30 in the morning and something comes to me, if I don't write it down, I can't go back to sleep. So I have to write the poem or the lines or whatever idea I have down in a paper or put a note in my phone. And you will see, like, for example, some writings or some poetry and things like that out there. And sometimes I say 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, because that's when it comes. Sometimes it comes when I'm driving or you know, walking out in nature. Okay, you have to write about that or talk about that. So it just, whatever feels right. Like there's certain writings that I do have a plan, that it's intentional. Like I know I wrote about being out in a land. I know I want to write a book about nursing experiences. I you know, there's I know that now we plan to write about a book about HI and human intelligence. That's a plan. But in my everyday writing, whatever spark comes, I just have to write about. And that's why I call myself outside the box, because one day it might be baking a bread, another day that might be walking in nature, another day might be playing with my dog, another day might be something super serious about mental health. You know, it's just whatever comes, here I am. I'm just kind of like an outlet. It's flowing
Let me
through.
tell you something about Gabriella. Did you ever notice that some people, you can stand, some kids can stand next to a speaker and listen to music, and it just gets them all excited. They just seem to absorb music. Other people can listen to a motivational speaker that just energizes them. Gabriella can literally walk out in her backyard and start to just feel the trees and the nature around her, and walk down towards the beach and see the ocean. And she is literally energized.
Yeah.
Now, that's pretty amazing. And people should understand what makes them feel like that.
Yes.
She's a great example like that.
Yeah.
Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate being here, and I've taken too much time. And I know you got somebody else in the green room, and I'm more than willing to relinquish my seat. So thank you very much, and thanks for the invitation, Gabriella. I appreciate that. And
let me say this before you go, Mr. Rawson. This is one of the finest moments of happenstance. That is, we did not plan it, but it worked out so well. And I would love to have you come back some other time so that we can explore some of those things that you've done with homelessness, some of the things that you've done with addiction, some of the businesses that you've started, the failures, the successes, because we don't know who is out there that is going to be touched, encouraged, and inspired by your works. When I first met Gabriella, I could not stop talking to her about someone I thought she knew, she did not know, about this guy from her country whom I know and me inspired very much from a guy from her home country, but she did not know about. So we get inspired by people from regardless where they come from. He was a mathematician, one of the finest mathematicians that ever walked on the surface of the earth. And he taught me in a special way. I've actually thought about developing some kind of program about this amazing guy. But again, what I'm saying here is I'm grateful that you came into the room. You didn't just stay in the green room. You came to the stage. You gave us some pearls of wisdom. Thank you so much. We'd love to have you back. With your permission, I'll get your contact from Gabriela and we can stay in touch, because that's how we amplify the goodwill of the world. Thank you so much, Mr. Rawson.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
You guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you, dear.
And in the green room, I think Rick has disappeared. But Gabriela, me and you can still continue for a little while more. And we can start to conclude. Last week, I had the fortune of talking with another lady, born and raised in Chicago, who writes about lucid. Well, she has a special gift. Your gift is you can find beauty wherever you go. You can find beauty in nature. You can find beauty in people. This lady, she has a special gift called lucid dreams. She can have a 15-minute nap in the afternoon and she wakes up with a novel in her head. Sophisticated writer. She has like 21 books. So I was fortunate to bring her on, and I've known her a while back. We met also by happenstance. Maybe we should actually do another event just to talk about happenstance, the power of meeting people when you did not plan to meet them, and great things come out of that. Because look at what we just learned from Mr. Rawson. Thank you so much for bringing him on. But let's talk about going forward. I know you say you don't plan things too much. What can we expect to see in your body of work in the next 12 months? That is 2024.
Well, there's more books for sure. One of the book that we are working on is artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. And in my publication, Dancing Elephant Press, currently now we have a book project that's going on about that, and we are accepting articles if anybody's interested. Because it's such a big topic, and we are specifically focusing on writers and AI intelligence taking our work and using it, and how people feel about that. But we also look at different views of that, right? Because AI might be really good in medical technology or some other. It's a little bit complex, right? So we are trying to look at all those areas. So that's a book, that's a collaborative book that's with people all over the world are going to be working on it. Personally, I am there's a few collaborations that are not 100% yet, so I can't talk about that yet, but I'm working on a book with a few people about womanhood and my trip out to the land, and that's probably will conclude this year for sure. And I'm also putting together a photography book together with some poems and lines about the land that I visited, the Eastern Washington Scablands, to shoot beauty and try to convey through a photo story when I went through, what kind of transformation while I was out there. And I would like to kind of put a collection of story together as a nurse, because I've been a nurse now for 30 years, and kind of share what does it mean to be a nurse, how a nurse's day would look like in different settings, what kind of experiences you go through, so you kind of can look at it from a different perspective. And there's a few other little projects in the mind, but we'll just see what happens. I'm trying to be really flexible this year. Whatever comes, we'll just go with it.
So what I'm saying here is you're always working on something. You're always onto something. How do you find the time? And you're still busy. Back in Seaside, you were not just taking care of your own work. You're in charge of a whole department. How do you do all of that? How do you figure this time out? Because most writers, maybe they suffer from writer's block. Some don't even have the ideas. How do you get the ideas, and when do you find the time?
I have constant flow of ideas. I have too many. I have to stop them because there's just so many that I have no trouble of writing. It's like they just come. time, as many times I get up really early, or I
Mhm.
even write, during my lunch breaks or after work on the weekends. Whenever I feel like it, I just write. Sometimes I dictate, Wha- whatever. This morning I woke up at 3:30 and was working on my photo book and writing and looking at a
Wow.
picture and see what emotion comes and then just write it down.
So you must be what they call a polyglot. The last guest also was also a polyglot. That means those very smart people who can handle art, they can handle science, they can handle languages, anything they can pick it up. They can just chew it and just spit it out, chew it, spit it out. It comes so easy to you. You make it look easy, but I know it's not easy. And I want to thank you very much because you are a tireless, a restless writer who never ceases to write from the heart. And I don't know if our guests, some of them through Facebook, you have a question, please feel free to drop it in for Dr. Korosi to answer before she goes. Otherwise, I'm going to attempt, uh, if I can remember and share with you a piece of writing that I first got to know about in 2016 or so, and it had to do with from the heart. And you write from the heart. And since we're talking about a topic, we got to talk about addictions. I want to see if I can bring it up because it has something that really touched me about how we can transcend our common experiences, how we can transcend our personal or our common experiences. Do
Mhm.
you have any uh, suggestions for those who are struggling with the writing? If there are any questions coming in, they'll come, you can answer. But for anybody who is struggling with writing, what suggestions do you have for them?
Well, there's a book that we just published that has creative writing ideas to spark your imagination. It
Very
has
cool.
52 inspirational stories for every day. It's from writers to writers. So this is written by 5 editors, and we did for 52 weeks. We did writing prompts in the publication, and those prompts are in this book. Um,
Writing prompts.
and
Well,
this is just to give you that spark.
Spark, yes.
But if I would just really, if you just want to write a story, I would say first of all listen to your heart. And the simplest thing is to close your eyes, take a deep breath, with the intention that you would like to write a story from your heart. And whatever comes to your mind first, write about that. And just write. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. Whatever comes to you, just write. If something is blocked, maybe it's not time for that story to come out. Go take a walk. Just be with yourself, be in that stillness and that moment and connect with nature. Things will come to you. When you force it, it doesn't come. I don't force any writing. If I don't feel like writing, I don't write. You know?
Has to be natural and should flow naturally.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. I
Okay.
believe that. Yeah.
That's a powerful grain of truth and inspiration right there. Uh, any advice for someone who is afraid of AI? Because I think some writers are a little bit threatened about AI. What's your take on that?
Like threatened what way you think?
They think that AI is coming to take our jobs. AI is going to take our jobs. We're not going to make money as a writer, or maybe using our words. Is there any advice? You have any fears, any concerns about the proliferation of AI and the fact that it could make some writers very, they could lose their jobs?
It's already happening. It is there. I believe that it is going to be there. That's the way of the future. I think we can try to support writers by showing our creativity, showing our humanity, sharing our stories. Because when a human writes a story, it's always going to be different than when a machine writes a story.
Yes.
because there's that human connection and intention in it.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, people are already losing their jobs because of AI or because of machines, things like that. But maybe, some things will be lost, but new things will happen.
Yes,
So
right.
never give up hope. Keep writing, keep
Hmm.
doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
But you also always have to think of sustainability. If you don't
Hmm.
make enough money from your writing,
Hmm.
then you have
Hmm.
to do something else next to it. I work a full-time job
Yes.
and then write next to it because I know even though my writing is a second pretty much full-time job,
Hmm.
I make just a little bit of money of writing
Hmm.
compared to how much money I make in
Yes.
nursing. So
But who knows? Someday maybe it will explode. It will become much bigger
I would love
because
that. I would just love to write and travel, but
yeah, the more you write, the more you perpetuate your name, the more people get to know about you. And someday you can't help it, but they'll be coming to you to get coaching services from you, to get literary help from you, editing and all of that. Because I like to write, but I don't like to edit my work. And that's
hmm
the part that even discourages me to write because I just don't want to go through the pain of editing it. Writing, no big deal, but editing it, cleaning it up, that's really an issue for me. So on the day that I find someone who can write from the heart and also edit from the heart as I do, I would say I can count myself a writer. So far, I don't quite give myself. I've written 2 books, but that's not so much the level of writing I want to be part of. But there is a piece. Oh, okay. Well, you got you got that one. I don't know what you thought about it. I don't know what you made of it, but
I loved
that's
it. I love that,
th-
and I highly recommend this book that Gideon
thank you,
wrote. It,
thank you,
it is it is a really great read for
thank
writers.
you, thank you. And I I put my heart and soul into that for 3 years, and that's what came up. I hope to do another one. It's going to be called Story Warriors at Work, in which I'll feature people like you, people like Mr. Rawson, we just talked about, who have been able to leverage or use their stories to do something that is bigger than them. It's not just about being selfish with your story, but sharing with others to encourage them, to allow them to discover their own humanity and come to play or come to do greater good in the world. But the piece I wanted to share is about an addict fell into a hole. Have you come across that short writing?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so it says an addict fell into a hole and he scrambled to get out. There was no way for him to get out. A businessman was passing by. The addict cried out, "Help, help, I need some help." The businessman looked from the top, said, "How did you get in there?" He said, "I fell in here." You know what the businessman did? He threw some money down to him and said, "Get that money and buy yourself a ladder and get out." What happened? That guy was still stuck. That addict was still stuck in the hole. Next, uh, psychiatrist came by. The guy cried, "Help, help, I'm stuck in here. I'm stuck here down in the hole." The psychiatrist went there and asked him, "How did you fall in there? How did you get there? Did one of your family members ever fallen into a hole? Who's your dad? Where did you grow up? What are your childhood experiences?" And then he promised to him that would come back the next day. The addict was still stuck in the hole. A rabbi and a pastor came by. The guy cried, "Help, help! I need help. I need to get out." The rabbi and the
hmm
pastor asked him some questions. "How did you get in there? How do you feel down there?" Then the pastor threw down a Bible to him, said, "Read it so you can find a way to come out." The guy was still stuck down there. And then finally, an addict came by and he cried, "Help, help, help, I need help." And then addict, the former addict, jumped down into the hole. Asked him, "Why you jump in here now? Both of us are stuck here. Why would you make such a colossal mistake?" Then the other addict said to him, "Easy. I've been down here and I know how to get out.
hmm
And I want to thank you so much because you have been in and around the world. You've seen many things. And you're using your voice, you're using your talent, you're using your words as a writer. not only your skill as a nurse, as a public health professional to get people out of the dark places of life, but you're using your words to tell them, I have been down there and I know how to get out. I want to thank you so much, Gabrielle, for taking the time. For those who are joining for the first time, this is the Story Warrior channel. We tell stories of unsung heroes with untold stories. I want to invite you, share this with your friend, share this with a neighbor, and let us continue to chase the darkness out of this world. My name is Gideon Fomokwai. I consider myself a product of Africa, produced in Asia, packaged in America, and distributed worldwide. Thank you so much from the Story Warrior. Thank you so much, Dr. Gabriela Korosi.
Thank you
See
for
you
having
again
me.
in the near future. Bye.
Bye bye.
I'll end the stream.